Hello and welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time on my channel. My name is Justina, and in today's video I'm going to talk about the first house in astrology, and more specifically about the planetary placements in the first house. So this is a continuation of a series I began a few months ago, and if you want to watch the other videos from this series, I will link them in the description box down below. And here, without further ado, let's begin. So the first house, an angular house. This is the house that tells us about our personality, about our individuality, about our childhood as well. It also tells us about how we were born, especially if you have any planets close to the ascendants. Like Pluto, for example, this will tell you that when you were born, it was more of a fight between life and death. Mars suggests that it was a cesarean section, for instance, or forceps. And Neptune, maybe the mother was under anesthetic. So all these little bits will tell you more about your life, about how you came into this world, or perhaps your physical appearance will be strongly influenced by a planet close to the ascendants. And it might actually overpower the qualities of the ascendant sign itself. So Venus close to the ascendant might give you wavy hair. Saturn might make your eyes slightly smaller. Or perhaps Jupiter. Oftentimes men with Jupiter on their ascendant, when they are older, they become bald, or perhaps they grow long beard. And this sort of things. But anyway, I'll get to this once I tell you about each planet individually. But what I also wanted to tell is that obviously not everyone has planets in the first house. So you can watch this video for your planetary ruler, and you might see that some of the descriptions strongly connect with who you are. Now, you might not always connect to every single bit that describes the sun in the first house or the moon. This strongly depends on the sign that the planet is in, but also the aspect that it makes to other planets. So with the sun in Aries, you might have a strong will and be confident. You might want to get yourself out there. But if the sun is poorly aspected by Saturn or Pluto, there could be a certain degree of anxiety, for instance, that comes with Saturn. Or perhaps there could be a tendency for obsessive behavioral patterns or power struggles, things like this. So it's really important to take into consideration the sign that the planet is placed in and the aspects it makes to other planets as well. Right, so let's start from the first planet, and this is the sun in the first house. Sun, one of the most important planets in our birth chart. It represents our ego, our persona, our individuality, our self. So here, if the sun is placed in the same sign as your ascendant, then you are likely to strongly resonate with your sun sign. And generally, in soul astrology, it means that your soul and your ego connect, so align harmoniously, because they are in the same signs. So here, the sun in the first house, you want to spread joy, you want to spread happiness, you want to make a mark in the world, so achieve something meaningful. Oftentimes, people with this placement are good leaders. They come across as self-confident and proud. The body is usually well built with a good posture, because the sun is the ruler of Leo. So you will inherit this kind of Leo qualities. Obviously, keep in mind the aspects that the sun makes to other planets, and also the sign that it is placed in. So the goal of this placement is to develop the self, the ego, your own persona, your own individuality, and you will increase your vitality if you follow your dreams, if you follow your goals. However, something to pay attention to with this placement, especially if the sun is poorly aspected, is to not to fall into narcissist tendencies, or perhaps a strong desire for power or obsessive behavioral patterns as well. So while trying to reach your goals and dreams and aspirations, which is so important for people with the sun in the first house, it's really essential that you don't think too much of what others think of you, because this can block your energies, your willpower, or perhaps hold you back or restrict your energies in some way. So here with the sun in the first house, you also may have felt as a child that you were being constantly watched or given extra attention by your parents, by your caregivers. Right, so let's move to the next planet, and this is the moon. So with the moon in the first house, you are of an emotional and sensitive nature, and you can sense other people's energies easily, especially the moods. If they are in a bad mood, then you can really feel it. You're like a sponge when it comes to other people's energies and moods, because you can sense them very easily. And for this reason, you might need some time alone to recharge and get rid of these energies that you might have absorbed throughout the day. So it's really important that you surround yourself with positivity or with people who are not angry or aggressive, because you are likely to feel overwhelmed by disturbing energies really easily. Now, with the moon in the first house, you are a natural caregiver, a nurturing person. The moon is the ruler of Cancer, the mother of the zodiac. So you might also resemble some strong qualities of your mother. You might even look like your mother as well. So here the moon in the first house is ruled by their emotions, and the moon is changeable. It's very changeable energy. So your moods might be also changeable depending on the sign that the moon is placed in. So generally people of this placement, they need to feel emotionally satisfied in order to be fulfilled. But also they like to surround themselves with objects that increase their inner emotional safety and security, or perhaps the objects that bring them memories, so sentimental objects of some sort. And when it comes to their emotions and their face expressions, you can easily see from their face expression when they are happy and when they feel miserable or angry, because they are very expressive of their emotions. Right, so let's move to Mercury. So let's talk about Mercury in the first house. Mercury has its joy in the first house in traditional astrology, so this is a very good placement for Mercury. Now, Mercury is the planet that rules our mind, our rational thinking, our curiosity, our understanding of the world, of life in general. So here Mercury gives a person in the first house a very sharp mind, a very stimulated mind, a mind that wants to accumulate knowledge, accumulate information. So the people with this placement are hungry for information. They want to know everything, so the ins and outs of everything. So very curious minds. People with this placement like playing games, game boards, doing crosswords, reading, communicating in general. They like to be moving all the time as well. So there's a lot of movement involved with this placement as well. Oftentimes people with the Mercury in the first house, they're very expressive. So they use their hands to express themselves, to help them to express themselves, to help them to describe things, or generally to express their emotions as well. Now, Mercury in the first house also is connected to traveling. So you may have traveled a lot as a child in your early life, moving a lot between your family, or perhaps taking short trips with your parents. And oftentimes people with this placement have a strong need to talk about themselves, about their needs, about their goals, about their desires. They are good communicators, and also they are good at giving presentations or interviewing others, or oftentimes they've got good writing abilities as well. Right, so let's look at the next planet, and that's Venus. Right, so Venus in the first house. So people with this placement have an urge towards unity, towards harmony. They've got this really loving energy and a beautiful aura. So they seek harmonious relationships, and they are really well balanced usually. And oftentimes as children, they hear that they are beautiful, good looking, handsome. So Venus enhances their physical features. Oftentimes Venus close to the ascendant gives a person wavy hair, or if it's placed in Libra, then the person might have soft hair. So lots of really interesting things, or big leaps as well. People with Venus in the first house have a subtle and gentle and pleasing quality to their personality. Now with Venus in the first house, there's also a tendency towards sugar craving, or perhaps towards fun. So they usually love fun and enjoy the simple pleasure of life, like eating and drinking and having fun and enjoying life. Usually people with this placement are well groomed and well dressed. Right, so let's look at Mars. Mars in the first house feels comfortable because Mars is the ruler of Aries, and Aries governs the first house in astrology. So here with Mars in the first house, your willpower, your self-confidence is increased with this placement. Obviously, we need to check the sign that Mars is placed in. So if Mars in Aries or Mars in Capricorn, where it is exalted, this willpower will be really increased. So thus the self-motivation and self-confidence. However, if Mars is afflicted and forms challenging aspects to other planets like Saturn, for instance, then there could be some challenges that connects to this placement. So perhaps something to watch out for here with Mars as well is impulsiveness or hot-tempered behavioral patterns. But other than that, people with this placement have very high physical strength, and they make very good football players or athletes or gymnasts. So here they maintain and regain the physical strength and energy by focusing on their body and by taking action on their independent drives and initiatives. And their ability for assertion and accomplishment is connected to their expressive and impulsive personality. Right, so let's look at Jupiter. Jupiter in the first house. I really like this placement, and I wish I had Jupiter in my first house sometimes, because people with this placement are so optimistic, so happy and cheerful, even if things are not going so well in their lives. Jupiter really increases their optimistic view on life, their perspective on life. Even as children, if they received poor nurturing, the energy of Jupiter can really transform their outlook on life in a positive way. So the way I see it is like people with this placement accumulated good karma in their past incarnations, and here they come into this lifetime with Jupiter on their ascendant or in the first house. It's like they receive the reward for the goodness that they did in the past. So they've got this guardian angel overlooking them throughout their life in this lifetime, helping them to get through. So a really beautiful placement, very optimistic. Jupiter in the first house is limitless. Jupiter in the first house doesn't like to be held back. This is about being independent. This is about seeing life as an adventure. These people are confident about their self-image. They naturally trust their own impulses to lead in the right life direction. If they concentrate on developing, growing, expanding their self-expression, their personality, their own individuality, they can really attract positive social experiences and rewards. So here we go, Jupiter in the first house. Now let's look at the next planet, and that's Saturn. Saturn in the first house. So people with displacement oftentimes are late starters. They might lack confidence early in life and be pessimistic about their life perspectives. And the reason for that is because that self-confidence, motivation, courage wasn't developed or crushed in some way early in life. And people with displacement oftentimes experience a sense of burden, lots of responsibilities early in life. They had to mature quickly. They were surrounded by grown-ups. Perhaps the father figure was missing, was absent as a result of death, sickness, divorce, or work, and the child had to take on father's responsibilities in order to help the family. So success oftentimes comes later in life, because first this person needs to develop its own personality, its own persona, its own individuality, understand its own strengths and weaknesses. People with Saturn in the first house oftentimes experience the difficult struggle to be born. They are born through forceps, or perhaps this could be a premature birth as well. And this implies a separation with the mother and the time that the child needs to spend in the incubator. So here loneliness comes into focus as well, because oftentimes Saturn in the first house per people are loners. They like to be alone and they need this time to recharge, because they might feel drained if they spend too much time in crowded places, for instance. So here, one of the goals of Saturn in the first house is to learn to freely express yourself, to regain your self-confidence, to regain your charisma. And this could be a long process, but this can be achieved with patience, consistency, because that's what Saturn qualities are about. Right, so let's move to the next planet. Uranus in the first house. So people with displacement, they need constant action, stimulation. And if their life is too steady, they might create their own chaos in order to fulfill their inner desires. So here, Uranus in the first house can make one look very distinctive, very original, unique in their own way. So their makeup, their hairstyle might be quite unconventional sometimes. They don't like to be restrained. They don't like to be held back. They're very independent and freedom-loving people, very original with their ideas, with their thoughts. Early in life, they might have felt like someone who didn't really fit in every type of environment. Perhaps they had to create their own tribe, find their own like-minded people who really aligned with their personality. The lesson for people with displacement is to grow, to evolve steadily rather than through chaos. So with displacement, it's really important to express your own individuality, to seek the freedom and independence that you need, but by doing it in a way that you become an example to another, rather than falling into a pattern when your need and desire for independence and freedom becomes a limitation or a burden to others. Right, so let's look at the next planet, and this is Neptune. Neptune in the first house. So with Neptune in the first house, you are very creative, very imaginative, very artistic. It's a beautiful placement for creators, people who create, work in arts, work in the creative industry in general. Now, something important to develop, grow, understand is the boundaries. So understand where the boundaries start and where the boundaries end. So make sure you set your boundaries with others, because you might be like a sponge when it comes to energies of others. You might be very receptive of energies and you might get really drained. And this could make you feel even unhappy. So it's really important to understand the boundaries of others. So because we're here with Neptune or Pisces on the ascendant, this might be a challenge, a lifetime challenge, something or a lesson to learn, the boundaries. Now, apart from that, learning about your own individuality, your own persona, it's really important as well. Understand your strengths and your weaknesses with this placement. There is a tendency for being too trusting, or perhaps too open to deception with this placement. So here again, the boundaries. That's why it's so important to have these boundaries, so that you can understand who you can trust and who you can't trust. Because if you open up too early, too soon, without knowing the other person, you might experience disappointment. So here also a lesson to know how to assert yourself and when to say no, because this might be also quite difficult here with this placement. Now, finally, when it comes to your own birth, this could suggest that you were born with the cord around your neck, or perhaps that your mother was under anesthetic, and then after your birth, you had to be separated from your mother. So here the boundaries that I discussed come into focus as well. Now let's move into Pluto. Pluto in the first house. So with this placement, you have a very strong and intense aura. It's like magnetic effect. So if you enter a room, You might see people staring at you and you don't know what's going on. What have you done? And so because you've got this really strong energy, you've got an intense look as well, piercing eyes, sexual energy. And there is a lot of transformation that comes with this placement throughout life. You might go through like every 6-7 years, your life transforms and things change. You become a different person, you become a different individual as well. So you've got this really influential transformational effect on others as well. So if you become friends with someone, you might see that this person might actually copy you or wanting to perhaps dress as you or use the same phrases. You've got this really strong effect on others, even without realizing that. Very powerful energy here. So with this in mind, the goal of this placement is to find the inner strength, the inner power, the inner authority. However, ensure that you don't misuse or abuse these energies, these powerful energies, because you've got really strong energies inside you. And you can use them in a very positive way, in a healing way even. Now, children born with this placement, oftentimes they struggle. They struggle to come into this lifetime. It's a matter of death and survival, pretty much. So the mother who gives a child who's got Pluto in the first house, or especially Pluto close to the ascendant here, might have had a very difficult birth. So here, early life is also connected to lots of changes, transformation, death and rebirth, so to speak. Oftentimes someone close in family dies just around the birth of the child. Pluto in the first house wants you to work on your shadow side, on your darkness, and ensure that any difficulties that occurred in the past or throughout your life serve as valuable lessons. And on this note, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until the next time.